There's a moment in the Gospels most people scroll straight past, and it's one of the strangest things Yeshua ever says to his own students, not to the crowd, not to the skeptics circling him, waiting for him to slip up, to his own inner circle, the 12 men who left everything to follow him everywhere he went. He tells them, essentially, if you don't understand what I just said, you're not going to understand anything else I ever teach you. Read that again, not you'll struggle with it, not it'll take practice. He says, if this one doesn't land, nothing else will either. So, what did he just say that was so important? It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't a confrontation with the religious leaders. It was a story about a farmer throwing seed. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to see something hiding in that story that changes how you read almost everything else Yeshua ever taught. And it ties directly into something we've already talked about on this channel about burdens and curses and who's actually responsible when obedience doesn't take root in a life. Here's the story, the way he first told it. A sower goes out to sow, and watch what he does, because on the surface, it looks almost careless. Some of the seed falls on the path, the hard, walked-over strip of dirt at the field's edge, and it just sits there, exposed, until the birds swoop down and take it before it's even covered. Some falls on rocky ground where the soil is thin. And here's the part that should catch you off guard. It grows faster than anything else, practically overnight, but there's no depth underneath it, so when the sun gets hot, it scorches and dies before it ever produces anything. Some falls among thorns, and for a while you'd think it was fine. It grows right alongside the weeds, same field, same sunlight, but slowly the thorns win. They choke it out before it ever gets the chance to bear fruit, and some, finally, falls on good soil, and it doesn't just grow, it multiplies 30, 60, 100 times what was planted. 4 soils, 4 completely different endings to the exact same seed. Now here's the question nobody in the crowd that day thought to ask, and it's the question this whole video hangs on. Why would a farmer sow like that? Why throw good seed onto a hard path, into a bed of rocks, straight into a patch of thorns? Any farmer doing that on purpose looks incompetent, unless the point was never about the farmer's technique at all. Later, alone, his own disciples ask him to explain it, and this is where he drops the sentence that should stop you cold. Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? Sit with that claim for a second, because it's enormous. He's not saying this parable is important. He's saying it's the master key. Miss this one, and every other story he tells you is going to stay locked. So let's actually find the key. Go back and look at the seed itself closely, because there's a detail almost everyone reads past. The sower never carries 4 different bags of seed. He doesn't save the good seed for the good ground and toss cheap seed onto the path just to get rid of it. It's the same seed every single time, sown the same way into every kind of ground without discrimination, which means, and here's the light bulb, the outcome was never about the seed at all. It was always about the ground. Once you see that, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, watch what happens when you hold that same lens up to the next parable Yeshua tells. Take the story of the wheat and the weeds. A man sows good seed, and an enemy comes in the night and sows weeds into the same field. No soils mentioned this time, but look underneath it. It's the exact same question. What's actually growing in the ground you've been given, and what will the harvest reveal when it's finally sorted out? Take the mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, and yet it grows into the largest of garden plants. People usually hear that and think it's a story about small beginnings, but notice the detail hiding in plain sight again. It still has to be planted in a field. The growth still depends entirely on where it lands. Take the leaven hidden in a lump of dough until it works all the way through it. That story only makes sense if you already understand that the same substance can either transform what it's placed into or do absolutely nothing, depending on what it's placed into. Even the parable of the talents, servants judged by what they did with what they were given, is the same question from the sower, just told facing the other direction. Not, what did the master hand you? What did you do with it once you had it? This is what he meant. Understand the sower, and you're not holding one parable anymore. You're holding the key that unlocks nearly everything else he ever taught, because he keeps asking the exact same question, dressed in a dozen different costumes. Not, was the word good enough? But what happened to it once it landed, and here's where this connects to something we've already dug into on this channel because it's the same fight from a different angle. Remember the burden conversation, the claim that Torah was too heavy, a curse, the reason obedience always felt impossible. We already showed that the instruction itself was never the problem. Yeshua said his own yoke was easy, his burden light, not because the standard changed, because the burden people kept describing was never coming from the word in the first place. This parable is the same argument, told as a story instead of a statement. The seed was never heavy, the seed was never a curse. The seed was always good, the exact same seed offered freely into every kind of ground without exception. If it doesn't take root, that was never a flaw in what was given. It's the ground. It has always been the ground. Deuteronomy already told us this long before this parable was ever spoken. The commandment, Moses says, is not too mysterious, not too far off. It's near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may do it. Good seed, reachable, never designed to fail. So look again at the three soils that don't produce anything, and notice none of the reasons trace back to the seed. The path is hardened, not because the seed was wrong, but because the ground had been walked over so many times by the same habits, the same excuses, that nothing new could break the surface anymore. Yeshua says the birds that snatch the word away represent the enemy. Moving fast before it can even take hold, the rocky ground grows fast and dies faster, not because the seed was wrong, but because there was no depth for a root, and the same person who received the word with real joy folds the second real pressure shows up. The thorns don't kill the plant outright, they strangle it slowly. The cares of life, the pull of money, the pleasures that quietly take up more and more room until there's nothing left to bear fruit. Every single failure, and it's the ground every time, which is uncomfortable because it's much easier to believe the seed let you down than to ask what your own ground looks like right now. James says it plainly later in almost the same picture. Receive the implanted word with meekness and be doers of it, not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Hearing isn't receiving. Receiving isn't the same as bearing fruit. All three failing soils technically heard the seed hit the ground. Hebrews says the same thing, looking backward at an entire generation in the wilderness who heard the same good news, and it did them no good at all because it wasn't mixed with faith in the ones who heard it. Same word, no profit, because of what the ground brought to it or failed to. So what does the good soil actually do differently? Luke tells us, the ones with a noble and good heart hear the word, hold it fast, and bear fruit with patience. Hear it, hold it, then wait. Fruit in this story was never instant. If your ground has gone hard from the same excuses on repeat, that's not permanent. Hard ground gets broken up with deliberate, repeated effort, not a single good sermon. If your ground has always been shallow, quick emotion, no depth, faith that only shows up when it's easy, the fix isn't more excitement, it's roots. And if your ground has thorns growing in it, they don't get pulled by accident. Somebody has to go in on purpose over and over because thorns always try to grow back. None of that is about earning a better seed. You already have the good seed. You've always had it. The only open question was ever what you were going to do with the ground underneath it. So go back to where we started. His own disciples, confused, asking him to explain, and that sentence that should have stopped them cold. Do you not understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? Now you know exactly why he said it. Every other story he told was hiding this same question inside it, waiting for someone to notice. The seed was never the problem. Not in Eden, not at Sinai, not in a field outside Galilee, and not in whatever it is in your own life right now that hasn't taken root yet. The only real question left is what kind of ground you're going to be for it. So tell me honestly, path, rocky ground, thorns, or good soil? Which one sounds the most like you right now? Comment it below, no judgment. Most of us have been all four at different points in our lives. If this connected something for you, go back and watch the burden and blame shift video and the 10 Commandments video. This one was built to lock in right alongside both of them. Subscribe if you want to keep finding what's hiding in these stories with me. Until next time, go check your soil.